Hello f***ers, today I'm going to tell you all about f***ing hecklers, those f***s, and the best way of dealing with them. Let's get the f***ing video started. Hello and welcome to another episode of Let's Talk Comedy. My name is Gary Michaels and this channel is dedicated to new comedians. If you are starting out in your comedy career, hit that subscribe button and get the best tutorial videos to help you get your performing career started off the right way. And of course, if you're returning to this channel to check this video out and you've already subscribed, a big welcome back to you. On today's video, I am going to be talking about the best way of dealing with hecklers. I'm going to give you a few pointers and a few of my opinions on it, and mainly while hecklers are nothing to be afraid of, and I hope that the steps I give you are only going to act as a crutch, a get out of jail card to get the show back on track. But I do urge you, whenever a chance arises, to open up communication with the heckler, because there is always some humor to be had. Most of the time, there's some humor to be had. The rare times when they're actually trying to destroy a show, well, that should be shut down as quick as possible. But in my experience, 99% of the time, the person heckling, interrupting the show, only wants in their way to add to it. Now, in your opinion, they might be ruining it, but sometimes in their opinion, they're just simply trying to have a little bit of fun, and having fun back with them sometimes is a lovely thing to do. However, this video is about dealing with them, so let's talk about that. I'm going to start off with one of the things you should not do, and that is do not respond to a heckler with a line that's really offensive. Usually that's not the way to go. By saying something that's really offensive is only going to alienate yourself from the audience, and it's all about building up a connection with the audience, especially if you're the kind of comic who doesn't do offensive material usually, and someone heckles you and you give them a really offensive line. It's not the kind of branding that you've been setting yourself up until that point, and it's very confusing, and it also lets the audience know that you're not in control of your actions on stage, and you'll say something that doesn't sit well with who you are. And the last thing you want to do is let the audience know that you're not in control of any situation should it arise on stage. Now, of course, hecklers are usually dealt with by the MC. That's because usually at an open mic event, the MC spends quite a lot more time on stage than one particular act, because the act might only be doing 3 to 5 minutes or 7 minutes, and if someone shouts up during a 5-minute set, usually it's not going to destroy the entire show, and you can get on with just pretty much ignoring the person. You don't need to go into too much detail, especially if you are interested in really getting out the pattern you've worked hard on. Usually ignoring them in that short set will do just fine. And then afterwards, when the MC arrives back on stage, the MC should be the one to deal with the heckler and encourage it, or else shut it down, depending on what that style of night is all about. I really want you to hit that like button, you fucking prick, you bunch of liberal fucking left-wing massive f***ers. Hit the like button right now. Now, if you are the rare type of act that delivers very offensive lines, and you figured out a way to get over on an audience and entertain them by delivering very offensive lines, well then go for it. If somebody heckles you after you've told a few offensive jokes, well, they know what kind of act they heckled, and they are expecting that style of response, and I say go for it. Let them have it in whatever way you see fit. But the majority of us, certainly off starting off at an open mic level, are not going to be delivering such offensive lines, certainly not until we figure out how to entertain the majority of people. So here are my steps you can implement into your performance to deal with hecklers, and it doesn't matter what style of performance you do, these will help you out. First off is very simple. When someone interrupts the show, you simply ask them to repeat what they've said. This is very effective because usually the person interrupting the show only wants their friends to hear what they've said. They don't want the entire show to stop as a result of them interrupting it. So by you stopping your patter, looking over to the area they're in, and asking general question in that area, for the person to repeat what they said. You don't even need to point them out. You don't even need to know who it was that said it. And even if you do know who it was that said it, and you do know exactly what they've said, you still ask them to repeat what they said, because it's not really about you knowing it. It's about you putting them in the position where they have to repeat it now. Certainly, it's not going to be as funny the second time around for their friends and the people who've heard it around their area. And usually, that will get them to stop interrupting, and they won't even answer your question and repeat it the second time. And if they don't answer your question and repeat it the second time, you can very quickly know that that's dealt with, and go back into your patter and move along. Maybe one line about the interruption is fine, but you don't want to dwell on it too much. You don't want to entice them out, because if you entice them out, they'll feel like they're part of a volunteer type of situation now, and they're heckling back just because you prompted them to. You don't want to go down that road. So ask them to repeat what they've said. When you get silence, go back to your patter. However, if you don't get silence, here are a few more steps. During your comedy writing session, you are going to write out and learn off a closing statement that you are going to say when you want to stop talking to a heckler and get on with the show. You can learn off multiple quick pieces, or you can just learn off one that you know is going to be effective. And all this is a very simple way of closing a conversation with a person. You are going to mention the fact that you are grateful for them turning up to watch live comedy. You are also grateful for them wanting to put their own fun into the show. However, this is not that style of show, and all of these comics worked really hard to come up here and deliver the material that we're lucky enough to hear. And the audience all came out to hear them do that. And it's not fair on the audience, the acts, or the entire night if you keep interrupting the show, although we've had a little bit of fun. Now, this does a lot of things. It lets the heckler know who's in charge on the microphone. It lets the audience know that you have their interest at heart and you have the success of the entire show. That's in the interest of everyone. So multiple things here, and not only does you letting the heckler know that your time with them is over, it also helps get the audience on side with your point of view on this. Because as we've already said, a lot of the time the hecklers are looking for the justification from the audience or their friends or whoever they can get it from. If the heckler starts to feel like the audience is against them, then they will usually be quiet and not heckle for the rest of the show. And it lets everyone else who thought about heckling know what would happen if they try to do so. Now, it's important to remember this. Performing a piece of material that will close a conversation with an audience member can be used in two ways. If you ask the person to repeat what they've said, and they do repeat what they've said, but it's very clear to you that they're not trying to ruin the show, they're just trying to have a little bit of fun, and they seem pleasant enough, and they seem like they got good energy and good intentions, well then, by all means, do talk to them and see where the fun goes. And you know you have this piece of material already learnt off that you can just use anytime you want. And you can have a polite version of it. It doesn't need to be rudely shutting down the person. They're going to agree if they've got good energy and you've given them enough time to go back and forth with you. Well, if you give them that time and they're a good person, they'll absolutely agree with your statement in how to close that conversation down. However, on the opposite side, if you ask them to repeat what they've said, and they do repeat what they've said, and it's very clear that they're nearly in a bad mood, or all they want to do is be the leader of the pack and disrupt the entire night, and it's going to get worse from there. Well, in that state, you very quickly, automatically go to your closing statement. And you can make it slightly harsh. Put yourself in the leader, because that's who you are in the microphone. Whoever's holding the microphone at that time needs to be the leader for the entire show and bring it to where it needs to go, regardless of how small of a step you're going to make towards that direction, however big of a step you need to be trying to get there. So if they are up for playing ball, you let them play ball for a little bit just to have a bit of fun, because you know you can close it whenever you want. If they are not up for playing ball, you close that straight away. and then move on with your patter. Now here's another tip I give MCs. If you don't want hecklers to interrupt the entire show, it's very important you have a successful intro to the show. You need to show yourself as a dominant MC right from the beginning, because usually the majority of people who interrupt shows are not going to do so if they don't think they're ever going to win, and if they think they're going to get absolutely steamrolled. At the beginning of the night, while mentioning what the vibe is about and what kind of acts people are going to see and getting them excited for the show itself, you could also mention that it's not the night where hecklers are welcome. It's not the night where people interrupt the show. You've all come here for a good time and we are going to give you a good time. Let us do the entertaining. Now, just simply addressing it will usually make it so that hecklers don't get involved throughout the show. But the language you use while describing hecklers in your opening statement needs to be written out very carefully. You want to describe them in a negative way, something that no one would want to be in that audience. You want to say, we don't want people interrupting the fun. Something like that is very strong, because nobody wants to interrupt the fun of the entire night. But if you say, we don't want hecklers taking part, that sounds a little bit inviting, and it might have the opposite effect to what you want. So at the beginning of the night, certainly when it's not directed at any one person, it's just a general statement, you can be pretty harsh with your words while describing hecklers. And you can even write a funny bit about what you're going to do to hecklers, and once everyone gets on board with a laugh, well, that's a very strong message it sends to any would-be hecklers in the room. Another point I'm going to give you, if you do not want to have a closing statement learnt off to shut down that conversation, you can write out your own funny, light-hearted insult bit that you are going to mouth off as soon as somebody interrupts the show. But it needs to be clean. That's the real secret here. If you can absolutely go for a person over a 15 or 20 second piece bit with just insults, but they're all clean, you absolutely overwhelm them when they try and interrupt, and no one is going to be able to come back from a 20-second insult that's clean, especially if they curse. You can be the superior person because they've had to resort to something so low, and you can get them over on just that by default. So you come prepared so far ahead of them just by simply writing a comeback that is humorous and clean, and that is going to stand to you over and over again. So if you are the kind of act that really wants to put a person down if they interrupt the show, then I advise to write that in your comedy writing session and keep it clean. The funnier and cleaner and longer of a bit you are prepared with, that you can just deliver it like that with sharp, crisp punchlines involved, that is going to be a way to shut down a heckler, because no one is going to want to mess with you if you come at them in that way. Clean, clean, clean. So I want you to play around with each of these tips I've given you, and now you know if you learn these off and you bring them into your comedy writing, you are prepared for hecklers. You can shut down the conversation in a few different ways, and also you can even shut down heckling before it is a thing. Now I want you to understand you have this at your disposal, but I also want you to open up the dialogue with the hecklers, because dealing with the hecklers on a 101 is a great way for your improvisation skills. It's also a fun place to bring in those jokes that you don't really have a story for yet, or they're not in your pattern that you're saying on stage, but you have them learnt off and you really enjoy them. Perhaps you can steer the conversation with the heckler towards these areas, and so you can have entire pieces of patter that every time someone interrupts the show, you are going to steer the conversation to these places and they're learned off. Great way of bringing in material that you haven't yet figured out where you're going to put it in the set, that you just have in the back of your head, and it makes it look like you're this improvisation. Let's move on. So play around with each of these steps, and of course in the comment section let me know now if you are optimistic and feel a little more braver about taking on those dreaded hecklers. And as I said at the beginning, it's nothing to be afraid of. And after a while of doing so, the more experience you gain with talking to them, the more you are going to realize there's nothing to be afraid of. And 99% of them just want to have a little bit of fun. And it is a lot of fun to play back with them, especially now that you have a few ways of shutting it down and getting on with the night whenever you may need to. Now, I have addressed dealing with hecklers in a little bit of detail in my MC workshop that I have on this channel. It's 2 parts, and it's absolutely everything you would want to learn to MC a comedy night. I'm going to link it at the end of this video in just a second. I recommend you check out that if you are interested in MCing your own comedy night. Of course, you've already subscribed, and I really appreciate that. Perhaps share this video with someone who you think might need it, and do drop into the comment section, discuss what you liked about this video. If you have an idea for a video you would like me to make based on comedy or performance, please let me know in the comment section what it is, and I will do my very best to get on making that video as quick as I possibly can. Until then, go click on the MC workshop, give it a look at, perhaps there's something in there for you, and I will see you on the next video. Right on.